The elevator doors creaked open with a loud metallic groan, and for a split second, the dim hallway flickered under the glow of a faulty light bulb. Elisa stepped out, her reflection still visible in the elevator mirror even after she had left. The hallway stretched long and narrow, silent except for the faint hum of the city far below. She walked slowly, glancing behind her as though someone had followed, but no one was there. Or at least, no one she could see. That was when the door at the end of the hall slammed shut on its own. The echo thundered down the corridor, making Elisa jump. She froze, her heart racing, her eyes glued to the door. A second later, a shadow slid across the wall, long, twisted, and stretched unnaturally thin. It didn't match her shape. It moved like it had a mind of its own. Elisa gasped, backing up toward the elevator, but the doors had already closed. She was trapped in the hallway with it. The shadow began to ripple, as though invisible hands were pulling it apart. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement, like figures leaning out of doorways that were no longer there. Whispering voices rose, low at first, then louder, overlapping each other in broken phrases that didn't make sense. She spun around, and the hallway looked longer than before, stretching endlessly. She tried to run, but the floor beneath her feet seemed sticky, holding her back. And then she heard it, footsteps. Heavy, dragging footsteps coming closer and closer. But she couldn't see anyone. Panic filled her chest. Elisa turned to the far end of the hall, and there, for the briefest moment, she saw a figure standing still. It was pale, almost see-through, with eyes dark like deep water. Its lips moved, whispering words she couldn't hear. She blinked, and the figure vanished. Her body trembled as the air grew icy cold, her breath turning into faint mist. The voices hushed, leaving behind a silence that felt even worse. Then suddenly the locked door at the end of the hall flew open with a crash. A violent gust of air rushed through, pushing her hair back as though the building itself had exhaled. Beyond the door was nothing but pitch-black darkness. Elisa's eyes widened as a hand, thin, bony, and gray, slid out of the darkness and gripped the edge of the doorframe. She stumbled backward, her voice caught in her throat, unable to scream. The hand pulled harder, and something began to crawl out of that darkness. Its nails screeched against the wood, its joints bending in unnatural ways. The hall lights flickered wildly as the shadow stretched across the floor, racing toward her like a black tide. Elisa turned to run, but the floor cracked beneath her feet as if the hotel itself was swallowing her whole. And just when she thought she could escape, the lights went out completely. She was swallowed in total darkness, hearing only the slow creak of something crawling closer to her. That was when she felt the icy touch of fingers brush against her ankle. Do you want me to keep the same intensity and narrative style for all 5 chapters, ending each with an extreme cliffhanger like this? Elisa screamed, stumbling forward as the icy grip slid across her ankle. When the lights flickered back on, the hallway looked different. Shorter, narrower, the walls closing in as though the hotel itself was reshaping. She turned wildly, but the door to the stairwell had disappeared. Only the endless hall stretched ahead, lined with doors that looked identical, each one locked tight. Her breath came in sharp gasps. She reached for the nearest doorknob, twisting frantically, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers returned, louder this time, as if a crowd surrounded her on all sides. "Stay, stay, don't leave," the voices hissed, overlapping into a terrifying chorus. Then one door creaked open by itself, slowly as if inviting her in. Elisa hesitated, staring at the pitch-black room beyond. The air around her grew colder, and she felt a pull, like something invisible was drawing her inside. Against her will, her feet shuffled closer. Her mind screamed at her to stop, but her body kept moving. Inside, the room was dark except for a single dim lamp in the corner. Its yellow light flickered across the bed, where the sheets looked disturbed, as though someone had been lying there moments before. Elisa froze. The mattress sagged. The impression of a body began to appear, slowly, as though an invisible person were sinking into it right before her eyes. Her throat tightened, but before she could scream, the bathroom door inside the room creaked open. A faint dripping echoed from within. She could see the outline of the sink, the tub, and a shadow leaning over. But no one was there. Water began to pour out of the tub on its own, flooding across the tiled floor toward her shoes. The whispering stopped, and a new sound rose, a low, guttural growl that made her heart slam against her ribs. Elisa stumbled backward, but the room door slammed shut behind her. She was trapped. The growl deepened, vibrating the air. Slowly, a shape began to rise from the water in the tub. First the outline of shoulders, then a head, dripping with black, foul-smelling water. Its eyes glowed faintly, like dull lanterns under the surface. The figure turned toward her, its mouth opening impossibly wide, releasing a sound like the tearing of metal. Elisa pressed her back against the wall, shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, no." But the creature dragged itself out of the tub, leaving trails of water across the tile. Its footsteps splashed closer, each one echoing like thunder in her ears. She tried to reach for the doorknob behind her, twisting desperately, but the handle burned her hand, searing hot. Tears filled her eyes. The creature bent down, its face only inches from hers. Its watery skin rippled, shifting like melting wax, until it looked like her own reflection, her own face staring back at her with lifeless, hollow eyes. And then, with one swift movement, it lunged forward, pressing its face against hers as the lights in the room exploded into darkness. When the darkness lifted, Elisa was no longer in the same hotel room. She blinked hard, her chest heaving, her body trembling from the icy pressure that had just pressed against her face. Now she stood in a grand lobby, the kind you'd see in an old black and white movie. The chandeliers glowed faintly above, swaying as if a storm was shaking the building, though outside the tall windows there was nothing but pitch black night. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint squeak of the elevator doors opening at the far end. Elisa froze. Slowly, a group of people stepped out. At first, she thought they were normal guests, men in old-fashioned suits, women in long dresses. But their faces were pale, their eyes blank. One by one, they turned to look at her, their expressions empty, their bodies stiff as if held up by invisible strings. Elisa's heart pounded. She stepped backward, but the crowd began to move toward her in slow, jerky motions. Their shoes scraped across the floor. Their mouths opened at the same time, and a long sigh filled the lobby, like a single breath exhaled by dozens of lungs at once. "No," she whispered, spinning toward the staircase. She raced up, the steps creaking loudly beneath her. But the higher she climbed, the more the stairs seemed to stretch. By the time she reached the third floor, her body felt heavy, as if gravity itself wanted to drag her back down. A loud crash rang out behind her. She turned to see one of the pale figures crawling up the stairs on all fours, its neck bent at a sharp, unnatural angle. Its jaw hung open, drool glistening on its lips, and its eyes glowed with a faint white light. Others followed, their limbs twisted, their movements snapping like broken puppets. Elisa bolted down the hallway, her footsteps echoing. She grabbed the first door she saw and flung it open. Inside was a grand dining room, the long table covered in dust and cobwebs. Chairs were knocked over and silverware was scattered across the floor. As she stumbled in, the door slammed shut behind her. Her chest tightened as a sudden clinking sound filled the room. Slowly, every fork, knife, and glass on the table began to rattle, then rise into the air. The chandelier above flickered wildly, casting warped shadows that stretched across the walls. A loud bang shook the room. The silverware shot across the air, embedding itself into the walls and floor, missing her by inches. Elisa ducked behind a chair, trembling. Then the long mirror on the wall cracked. A dark liquid seeped through the cracks, spreading fast. Slowly, hands, thin, gray, bony hands, pressed against the glass as though something on the other side was trying to push its way out. The mirror groaned, the cracks spreading wider and wider until a deafening shatter filled the room. From the broken glass stepped a tall, shadowy figure, faceless and draped in darkness, its body crawling with smaller shapes that looked like rats made of smoke. The creature tilted its head toward Elisa, and though it had no face, she felt its stare pierce straight into her soul. She tried to scream, but her voice caught. The shadow moved forward, stretching across the table like black fire. And then, with a burst of speed, it rushed straight at her, swallowing the room in complete darkness. Elisa's eyes shot open, and she found herself lying on a cold concrete floor. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of rust and mildew. She coughed, her breath turning into mist as if the temperature had dropped even lower. Around her were giant pipes and broken machinery. She was in the hotel's basement, the boiler room where countless whispers claimed guests had vanished. A low hum echoed from the walls, vibrating through her bones. She stood slowly, her footsteps crunching on shattered glass scattered across the floor. The shadows in the room felt alive, shifting and curling against the walls like black smoke. Somewhere in the darkness, a chain rattled. "Elisa," a voice whispered. She froze. It wasn't one voice, but many, layered, whispering her name in unison, bouncing off the walls. "Elisa, come closer." Her knees trembled, but her body moved forward as though pulled by invisible strings. The air grew heavier the deeper she walked, pressing down on her chest. In the far corner of the room, an old boiler stood, its rusted door slightly ajar. Heat pulsed from within, though the rest of the room was freezing. She leaned closer. That was when the door slammed open, and a blast of air sent her sprawling back. From inside the boiler, a face formed out of the rising steam. A woman's face, mouth open wide in a silent scream. Then another appeared beside it. And another. Dozens of faces pressed against the steam, their eyes hollow, their mouths stretched unnaturally as though they were trapped inside. Elisa scrambled to her feet, tears streaking down her face. "No, no, no," she cried, turning to run. But behind her, the pipes along the wall began to burst one by one, spraying scalding steam into the air. Shapes crawled out of the vapor, figures with blackened skin and glowing eyes, dragging themselves across the floor with twisted limbs. The sound of dragging feet grew louder. She spun around and saw them. Dozens of shadowy forms crawling out of the steam, their hands reaching for her, their whispers now deafening. She bolted toward the stairs at the far end of the room, but halfway there, the ground cracked open. A black void yawned beneath her, the concrete crumbling away. She barely caught herself on the edge, her fingers gripping the broken floor. Below was nothing but endless darkness, filled with faint glowing eyes staring back at her. She screamed, kicking wildly as unseen hands reached up, trying to drag her down. Her grip slipped, her nails clawing against the concrete. She cried out for help, but the only answer was the hiss of steam and the rising whispers calling her name. And then, just as her fingers lost their hold, a hand shot out of the shadows and grabbed her wrist. It wasn't human. The hand that gripped Elisa's wrist was ice cold, its fingers long and bony, its skin gray like ash. She tried to pull away, but the strength was overwhelming. It yanked her upward with a single violent tug, tossing her onto the cracked floor of the boiler room. She gasped for air, clutching her wrist, and when she looked up, she wished she hadn't. The figure towering above her was not fully human. Its face shifted like liquid, melting and reforming into different people. Sometimes men, sometimes women, sometimes a child's face flashing for only a second before twisting back into a hollow mask. Its eyes were always the same, black voids, endless and unblinking. "Elisa," the thing whispered in dozens of voices at once. "You belong here." She scrambled to her feet, running blindly up the stairs. Her footsteps echoed as if she were being chased, though she didn't dare look back. When she reached the top, she burst through a door, only to find herself not in the hotel lobby but on the rooftop. The wind howled, cold and sharp, whipping her hair across her face. The city lights of Los Angeles glittered below, but they felt impossibly far away, like another world. She stumbled forward, and that's when she saw them, the giant water tanks looming like silent sentinels. Their metal surfaces dripped with condensation, and each one groaned as though something inside was moving. Her chest tightened. She took a step closer. A dull thump echoed from within one of the tanks. Then another. The sound of fists pounding from the inside. Her stomach turned. "No," she whispered. The lid of the nearest